It seems Trump may have just committed the single biggest blunder of the entire trade war. And China? They saw it coming from miles away. While he's hurling threats in every direction, Beijing has outplayed him. And America's closest partners, Canada, Europe, and Japan, are outraged. The G7 is splintering, and Trump's approach is crumbling right before us. Here's what happened. Just days ago, Trump bragged that Chinese imports would face tariffs as steep as 55%. But when the two sides were set to meet and finalize a trade deal, Beijing suddenly backed out. Insiders even revealed China isn't taking any of this seriously. And Washington's response? They quietly postponed the talks and pushed back the tariffs, because deep down, they know they can't win this fight without China. But instead of rethinking his approach, Trump turned on America's allies. He slapped Canada with 35% tariffs, hit Switzerland with 39%, and even targeted Taiwan, his most crucial chip supplier, with 20%. Rivals are spared while allies are punished. Where's the strategy? This isn't calculated policy. It's disorder. He's disrupting trade, raising prices, hurting U.S. companies, and alienating the very nations that once stood shoulder to shoulder with America. Meanwhile, China says nothing. No noise, no drama, just silence, as Trump undermines his own position. Inflation is climbing, jobs are threatened, supply chains are cracking, and the G7 is in disarray. Who's really steering the game now? In just a matter of days, Trump's team has torn apart the delicate framework of global trade and acted as though it's all part of the plan. The tariffs are back, and they're biting. But America's allies are the ones feeling the most pain. Europe was struck with 15% tariffs under the excuse of resetting trade. But there's nothing fair about it. EU leaders are furious, and Canada? A crushing 35% tariff with no talks, no compromise, no justification, just a blow. Washington claims Canadian goods are being smuggled in, but nobody's buying that story. It's a convenient excuse while real businesses pay the price. This isn't economic reform. It's political pressure masked as policy. Trump isn't shielding U.S. workers. He's strong-arming allies into obedience. It's no longer about economics. It's about dominance. And while he lashes out, China plays an entirely different game. No shouting, no reckless moves. Just patience, sharp analysis, and precision. And it's working. Canada pleads for an exemption like Europe's. But China? They negotiate a 90-day tariff delay. And they get it. That alone shows the strength of Beijing's hand, and Washington's fear of a total trade breakdown. The truth is, America doesn't just rely on China for cheap toys or electronics. China is the backbone of the U.S. consumer economy. According to the Census Bureau in 2024, over 16% of U.S. imports came from China. Smartphones, clothing, medicine, the essentials of daily life. Even during a trade war, shipments remain massive. If imports from China were cut tomorrow, shelves across America would be bare within weeks. That's not an exaggeration. That's the supply chain reality. Walmart itself has admitted that nearly 60% of its inventory comes straight from China. And the White House knows full well, any major disruption with Beijing would damage the U.S. economy far worse than any military conflict. But China's real leverage isn't just in consumer products. It's in rare earth elements, critical for EVs, fighter jets, medical equipment, and smartphones. Beijing controls nearly 70% of the world's production, and it has already hinted that access for the U.S. could be cut off. The last time China did this, against Japan in 2010, Tokyo's tech sector almost collapsed. If they pull the same move on America now, it won't just be trade pain. It would be an economic blackout. And while Trump is punishing allies, China is moving with precision. One of its sharpest weapons? U.S. government debt. In 2024 alone, China dumped over $100 billion in U.S. bonds. Each sale hits Washington and Wall Street where it hurts. Why? Because the U.S. runs on debt. When a giant like China pulls back, interest rates climb. Loans become more expensive, not just for the government, but for businesses, homeowners, and entire industries. And Trump knows it. Every bond sale is more than numbers flashing across a screen. It's a signal, a coded message, a warning shot in the language of global finance. Push too hard, and the response won't come with words. It will come with action, striking where it hurts the most. The U.S. dollar and the credibility of America's markets. For decades, Washington believed its position at the top was unshakable. That no country, not China, not Russia, not anyone, could challenge the supremacy of the dollar or the stability of U.S. markets. But that assumption is no longer safe. The foundations of the system are shifting, and the shock waves are already being felt. This is no longer a prediction about the future. It is the present. In June 2025, China unloaded U.S. Treasury bonds on a massive scale. The sell-off sent bond yields soaring and shook investor confidence worldwide. The Federal Reserve was forced into an emergency intervention, pumping liquidity into the system just to stop the bleeding. But even that came at a cost. Liquidity drained elsewhere, and the Dow Jones collapsed by more than 600 points in a single session. What does this mean? It means the trade war has transformed into something far bigger, a financial confrontation. And China has proven it doesn't need speeches, doesn't need threats, doesn't even need to raise its voice. Its actions alone are enough to destabilize Wall Street. But the financial chessboard is only one part of this story. Beyond the numbers, the global order itself is fragmenting in ways that were once unthinkable. Look at India. For years, New Delhi carefully balanced its relationship with Washington. It wanted better access to American markets, better military technology, and closer ties to the West. But it also avoided any moves that would openly provoke the US. That careful diplomacy is gone. In 2025, India is charting its own course, louder, more independent, and more defiant than ever before. Despite constant pressure from Washington, India continues to buy cheap Russian oil. The numbers are staggering. Before the war in Ukraine, only 2% of India's oil came from Russia. Today, it's over 34%. That's not a minor adjustment. It's a complete reorientation of India's energy map. Washington has threatened sanctions. It has warned of reduced defense cooperation. It has dangled the threat of freezing military technology transfers. But India isn't yielding. Its calculation is cold and precise. National energy security is worth more than America's approval. Cheap Russian oil powers Indian factories, fuels Indian cars, and keeps inflation under control. For India to bow to Washington would be to damage its own economy and gain nothing tangible in return. Whether India will hold this position long-term remains uncertain. But the fact that it is resisting at all tells us something profound. The old system, where Washington dictated and others complied, is breaking down. And if India is defiant, China is outright rebellious. Beijing has gone far beyond quiet resistance. It openly defies US sanctions, trading with both Russia and Iran in full view of the world. In just the first 6 months of 2025, imports from Russia surged, driven largely by oil and gas. At the same time, Beijing is spearheading a silent revolution in global finance, replacing the dollar with the yuan in international transactions. Country by country, contract by contract, the dollar's grip is weakening. Chinese oil tankers still dock at Iranian ports. Chinese companies still sign billion-dollar contracts with sanctioned partners. And all of it happens despite the looming threat of secondary sanctions. Washington calls for unity, but China is quietly building an alternative system, a network of trade, finance, and diplomacy where American pressure simply doesn't matter. And here's the great irony. The more aggressively Trump pushes, the more isolated America becomes. His strategy was meant to trap China. Instead, it is alienating America's closest allies. Europe is growing restless, not just because of tariffs, but because of the arrogance with which Washington dictates its terms. Canada, one of America's closest friends and neighbors, is already staggering under 35% tariffs. Its forestry sector is bleeding. Its dairy farms are collapsing. Its automakers are suffering. Statistics Canada reports exports to the US falling sharply, and this is not a temporary dip. These industries can't just find new buyers overnight. The damage is structural, and it will be long-lasting. And while Canada suffers, China advances. Beijing is stepping into the gaps. Washington is creating, signing new trade deals, securing new energy partnerships, and deepening its influence across Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Step by step, China is replacing the US as the partner of choice for much of the developing world. This raises the central question. Will Washington realize it has walked straight into a trap before the system unravels completely? Or will it continue fighting unwinnable battles, burning alliances it desperately needs, and empowering the very rivals it hopes to weaken? The problem is that Trump's approach doesn't build unity. It breeds division. Look at the G7. Once it was a symbol of Western solidarity. Today, it looks more like a group of countries scrambling to avoid American punishment. The tariffs tell the story. Canada 35%, Thailand 19%, Taiwan 20%, Switzerland an astonishing 39%. There's no logic here. No strategy beyond one brutal message. Loyalty means nothing. Pay up or suffer. And so America's allies pay twice. First, by buying US government bonds, helping to finance Washington's enormous debt. And second, when their own industries are hammered by US tariffs. Even when they try to shield Washington from the fallout, they get punished harder. It's a cycle that breeds resentment and accelerates fragmentation. And while the US ties its allies into knots, BRICS is quietly offering a way out. Stability, scale, predictability, fairness. What Washington no longer provides, BRICS is stepping in to deliver. Countries burned by US policies are now flocking to BRICS. Deals are being signed. Infrastructure projects are being funded. Trade is expanding. The global realignment that once would have taken decades is now happening in a matter of years. India, China, Brazil, Indonesia, these are emerging as the new trade hubs. Instead of isolating China, Trump's strategy has made Beijing stronger. Global trade isn't collapsing, it's rerouting, reshaping, reorganizing. And China is sitting at the center of it. Inside the United States, the chaos is even clearer. Trump's customs system is a bureaucratic nightmare. Exporters describe it as like trying to interpret a tax code written in panic. A single error, routing goods through the wrong port, filing under the wrong code, can trigger a 40% penalty. Rules shift without notice. Exceptions are granted, then revoked. The system is murky, inconsistent, and impossible to navigate. Businesses are leaving not because they want to, but because they can't operate under such conditions. No global company can plan investments when the rulebook changes overnight, and the referee is also the judge. On paper, the US still looks strong. The numbers are big. The military is unmatched. The economy is vast. But beneath the surface, the political reality is clear. America is becoming more isolated, more distrusted, and less reliable as a partner. If this trajectory continues, the US won't lose global leadership because it was overpowered. It will lose because it cornered itself, cutting off its own options with every new tariff, every new sanction, every new threat. And this isn't theoretical. It's happening, right now, in real time. So the question is, will Washington realize what's happening before it's too late? Will it pull back, rethink, and try to rebuild alliances? Or will it continue doubling down, fighting enemies it cannot defeat, while driving friends away? The answers aren't written yet, but the world is changing, rapidly, dramatically. The post-war order built by America is crumbling. A new order is rising to take its place, and the outcome will shape the 21st century. If you want to follow this transformation, if you want to see the pieces move on the global chessboard as it happens, subscribe to the channel. Because this story isn't over. In fact, it's only just beginning.